everyone. Welcome to Arinda Talks Fantasy and Sci-Fi. I'm your host Arinda, and today we're talking about SG1 with Tommy. The story of Stargate SG1 begins about a year after the events of the future film when the United States government learns that an ancient alien device called the Stargate can access a network of such devices on a multitude of planets and in space. SG1 is an elite United States Air Force Special Operation Team, one of about 20 teams from Earth who explore the galaxy and defend against alien threats such as the Goa'uld, the Replicators, and the Ori. The series runs up on Egyptian, Greek, and Norse mythology, as well as the legend of King Arthur. I always have liked Stargate SG1. The whole space traveling concept through a Stargate is somewhat of a mystery. You never know where you end up to. My favorite character is Teal'c. Although I love Stargate SG1, I never could get into the other series. Why? I have no idea. Maybe because SG1 was SG1 and I didn't want any other crews to mess up with that. I think SG1 is a great sci-fi series / movies, and the beauty of it is that it doesn't travel to the future, but more like old civilizations and unknown worlds. Our guest today is Tommy Brown. Hello Tommy, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, well we're going to talk about Stargate SG1. So can you tell me, please, what is, in your own words, what is Stargate SG1?
Well, Stargate SG1 to me was a one of those hidden gems of sci-fi that I'm really happy is people are starting to notice and see how great of a sci-fi show it was. It was about a little band of just real curious guys who was trying to defend their planet, going out and facing some incredible odds.
And have you always been a Stargate fan?
Yeah, ever since it premiered, I have. I was
So,
actually a fan of the original movie.
mm, yeah, me too. And that started for me, but I must say that I couldn't get myself into the other series. I don't know why, but SG1 was always my favorite.
Yes. Are you referring to Atlantis?
Yeah, Atlantis, and I think there was some couple of more of them.
Yeah. The couple of more of them I couldn't get into as well, but I was actually a fan of Atlantis. I thought that was a really nice addition to the canon.
So, do you have any favorite characters?
Oh, favorite characters. Well, I'm gonna have to say, depending on my mood, if I'm in a nice mischievous mood, it's always Colonel O'Neill, But Daniel's humanity, he's always a person that's a favorite of mine. Carter's intelligence and strength, But I'm gonna have to say overall maybe Tilk.
I like Tilk too, yeah.
Tilk always had a very interesting storyline to me. Um, always like when they dove into his family and into his backstory with Apophis and everything like that. His story arc from beginning to end was just always so fascinating to me.
Yeah, what I really like about his character is that at the end, he became, I don't want to say more humanized, but he had more humor in him.
Yes,
I
yes.
remember a episode that there was something with a little girl, and at the end, uh, Teal'c went to play with her in a like a child playground,
Hmm.
and they had those water pistols, and he was instead of shooting on her, he was shooting O'Neill. So yeah.
Yes.
So what do you think of the Stargate itself? Because it's a very ancient relic that is, of course, a transporting you from the one place to another place, and even to another world.
Well, the Stargate as a device, as in a device in the sci-fi universe, I thought was an ingenious plot point. Now, you can relate that to, say, the transporter of Star Trek, for instance. Instead of wasting the resources in a production like Stargate SG1 was when it first came out, and when Star Trek was when it first came out, they came up with a really ingenious way of eliminating those costs through the use of, say, the transporter in Stargate, through the use of the ring itself. And I thought that that opened up, and it did present so many great possibilities and fascinating storylines and new interesting worlds and things of that nature that they introduced into SG1.
When they used the Stargate for the first time, I must say, it got me a little sick because of the roller coasting thingy.
Before they adjusted for the planetary drift, I remember. Yes. That never really bothered me, actually. It was actually, it always added a little bit of extra flair to traveling through the Stargate, whether you'll be thrown out, the other side, or you'll come out thrown out cold or something covered with a little bit of permafrost, or, if you'll just step through, or if you'll get that nice spiral, roller coaster ride that you get, it's always something interesting when they opened up when they activated the Stargate and, they approached the event horizon.
Yeah, that's what I always think of it too. That when you step in through it, you don't know where you ended up to. And I remember for the first few times I was thinking, okay, are they now in Egypt or in Greece? Oh no, they're on another damn planet.
Yes, but weren't you excited though? You was excited to meet the culture and experience that world, right? I believe it was Chulak, if I remember correctly, right?
Yeah, it was. And
Hmm.
well, I think that's what I do like about SG1 is that um, they're not going specifically to the future, but they are going to old civilizations that
Hmm.
is all across the Milky Way, and that's what I did like about it because it's part of our history too. Because of course, on Earth there's Egypt mysteries, there are other culture mystery that is really combined in this series, and there is a lot of history telling too.
Yes, yes, it was. We used to have a theory. As I'm sure you do, you watch a lot of sci-fi and everything with your husband, and I'm pretty sure you guys interact and talk about a lot of the points, the very points that you bring to your audience. I have very much the same thing, and one of the theories that we used to have about that, what you were talking about, was that we used to call it like this sliders theory, that the writers through the Stargate gave us the opportunity to see the what ifs of if certain system lords were allowed to continue their path on Earth, or if certain things weren't to happen, or if they wish to follow certain deities on Earth. These planets that they visited, where they had these outshoots of uh, civilizations that were human. It always seemed like it let the writers explore the what ifs of the human condition.
So, what do you think about what they did to the series of Egyptian mythology in it and just build on there?
Well, I think that they did a really nice job at balancing the true Egyptian mythology with the entertainment and the alien aspect, the supernatural. Well, I should say the science fiction aspect of what the show is trying to present. I think that through Stargate, a lot of people were open to taking a look at actual Egyptian mythology, and because of Stargate, learned a lot because of it.
Well, I do think also that um, Stargate and, for example, Babylon 5 are the closest to what is reality for us.
Mhm.
What is your opinion about that?
You know, as an optimist, I have always leaned towards the future of Star Trek as being our inevitable path. But the world of Deep Space Nine, I mean of Babylon 5, is also so rich in the possibility of another path that an equally possible path that human civilization can take. And I agree with you. A lot of Deep Space, I mean of Babylon 5, was something that I could totally foresee being our future.
What do you actually love about SG1? Do you have
Ah,
any
like
favorites, or just the whole in general?
you know, okay, so Stargate SG1 was on for 10 seasons, 10 years. Okay, that's monumentous in a U.S. Production right now. The reasons that I contribute that, being a person who loves science fiction, who loves a great story, who loves great character development, right? SG1 had all of that. They had episodes that were so funny. Like what was it? Episode 100, where they were trying to make that television show with the SG1 and everything like that. When Marty came over and was and they was trying to pitch the show to him. Yep. Oh, that was funny to me. But they have such touching episodes, like the one where Tilk escaped the compound and he ended up in the attic covered with that parasite that was trying to eat him out, and like you was talking about earlier with the kid, with the young girl who was trying to help him out. They have such entertaining episodes, like with the anything that had to do with the replicators or anything like that. They had episodes where they just expanded on the possibilities of humanity with ascending and things of that nature, and how the path to being an ascended being always starts with understanding your humanity. So it was just such great writing with that show.
Yeah, I agree to that. If we let's talk about the characters in the show, starting with Lieutenant General Jack O'Neill.
Man O'Neill.
What can you tell me about him?
So okay, there is such a stark contrast between the Colonel O'Neill of the Stargate movie and the Colonel O'Neill of Episode 1 of the series. There's such a stark contrast between their personalities. And it's great that it's such that contrast exists because through his actions and through his experiences with Daniel Jackson on Chulak, you know, and with the what was his name? I don't know why I just forgot that little boy's name. Okay, but the little boy from Chulak, right? The one that befriended Colonel O'Neill, the
Oh
one that
yeah,
was
yeah,
yeah, him,
Shakar
right?
something, right?
hmm that he was such a great kid too. But through those experiences, and you could see the growth that brought back his desire to uh, basically live, as opposed to his desire to die in the SG1 movie. I mean, in a Stargate movie, right? So as a character, he already came in with such an interest on an interesting perspective to me to see, okay, where could this person who we knew of like this, how can they develop him? How can he grow? Into and then to include the humor that Colonel Jack O'Neill always has, no matter what the situation. Oh, I love him. He's awesome.
I remember every boy and every man had a crush on Dr. Samantha Carter. So, was she also a crush of you?
You know, I'll tell you why everybody had, well, I'll tell you my opinion of why I think everyone had a crush on Dr. Samantha Carter. Because Dr. Samantha Carter was like, just to try to understand how she was written, right? Okay. I think the first thing she basically said when she opened up to everybody was, just because her reproductive organs are on the inside and on the outside, just right from that right there, right, to understanding that not only did she say that with a purpose, but throughout the series, she just astounded people with her ability to quickly understand and adapt to almost any problem that arose, no matter what the situation was, how it was going, whether it would be her intelligence that did it, or her abilities as a soldier, but rarely, rarely, rarely ever that they focus on her any of her feminist qualities to do that. And that's, I think, what most guys, including myself, were attracted to a woman who was both super intelligent and adaptive and a strong soldier.
Well, I do think it was also funny that she had that military man talk.
She did. Right.
Uh,
Yes, she did. And that was another thing. That's exactly my point. That military man talk about her made her seem girl next door, accessible. Like you could just come out and just, not everything or every conversation with her would be something about, the physics of the sun or, astrology or something like that. She could talk about and laugh and, you know, joke around with people.
so, do you think that Daniel Jackson is a good addition to the team?
Oh, I love Daniel. Look, without Daniel Jackson brung the humanity to the team. There's so many instances where I could point to where the Stargate program, as well as the Stargate team itself, it would have been so easy for them to betray their values and what made them who they were because of, say, technology or the potential advancement to get things that would save Earth. That Daniel Jackson always kept them grounded in who they were. He was always the moral compass, and I always loved that about him.
I think also that he's a little bit underrated as a
Yes,
character.
right. I
Yes?
agree. Yes, I agree. But what way do you mean, though?
Well, I do think that people are more into like Connor Jackson and Samantha Carter than like say, well, Daniel in the first few, well, maybe the first couple of seasons, Daniel Jackson was really a super nerd, if I can say it like that.
You're absolutely accurate.
And but he grow, and
Yes.
that's exactly the same with Billy from the Power Rangers. Billy was a long time a super nerd, and then he grows out to this great fighter that was also integer, but also still the nerd, if I can say it like that.
Go right ahead.
But that was Daniel as well. Daniel, yeah, he grows a lot in the whole series.
Ah, you know, then since you're talking about Daniel Jackson, I'm gonna have to ask you, what do you think about the choice to bring in Quinn to replace Daniel Jackson?
I don't know because Daniel Jackson is Daniel Jackson, and he had a role to play with like that is so familiar, and he belonged to the team in a way, and that's why I have the same feeling with if you talk about SG1 and the other series. And
Hmm.
SG1 is always like special to me, and that team was great. And I do think maybe it is also because of the storyline, because you
Hmm.
are so known with the characters and the storyline. Um, so to put another team member or put another team into what they are doing, that is weird. And I couldn't ground that. So that's my issue with the other series as well. And in one way it is weird because we know SG1 is just one of the teams they have, and there are also other teams. So I probably have to set my mind of okay, if you are watching Atlantis or another part of the series, you need to see it as an extension and not only as the team of SG1.
So you see the team of SG1 as more as your family. This is my family. I'll be betraying my family if I was to like Ronan and his crew. If I was to like Colonel Shepard and his crew, I betraying my family of SG1. Is that's how you feel?
Um, I don't know if it is the same feeling like that of being that and saying of, oh, this is my family, but I think also at that time I was too much in SG1 and the storyline than in, for example, what are the other ones? It's a totally, in that way, a totally different storyline. And I don't know, I just couldn't get into it.
Okay, okay, nothing wrong with that.
So we already have talked a little bit of Teal'c.
Mhm.
Teal'c with his Laval Goa'uld. That was always a strange thing for me. I don't know how. What are your feelings about that?
I think that that was also a great thing to add to the dynamic of the Goa'uld. It added so much to their story and the possibilities of how they went with that. So if Tilk and his race were bred to house these Goa'ulds, which is something that they never even covered, say in the movie, for instance. Okay, it was a totally different type of life form in the movie, but um, from that particular instance, it opened up so much in the SG1 mythos with the Amazon Jaffa women who use those particular baby symbiotes that they referenced that Tilk had for their particular civilization. So I think it was great, but to have one of the Guau, babies running around, I would probably feel the same way that Jack O'Neill felt.
You know, it also reminds me of a little bit of Alien
I
with
agree.
that. And oh, I do remember in an episode that there was some kind of a magic thing that if you touch it, you switch souls with the other person. And I remember that there was a kind of a trader who did that, and Jack O'Neill's soul came into Teal'c's body, and Teal'c's body became sick,
Sick, yeah.
I thought Teal'c's soul was in the body of Jack O'Neill. So he tried to re-guide O'Neill how he have to take care of Teal'c's body, and that was so funny, that episode.
Trying to get Jack O'Neill to meditate.
Yeah, oh my gosh, yeah, that was so funny.
Yes,
And
one of my favorite Jack O'Neill episodes is where Thor, no, not Thor, who was it? Loki had kidnapped O'Neill and cloned him, but tried to get the body back real fast, but it ended up being a little kid.
mm,
Oh, that episode, right. So Jack O'Neill was stuck in the body of his younger self, his little teenage self, and he was trying to convince everybody at Stargate Command that he was fit for duty and everything like that. To me, that's one of my favorite um, Jack O'Neill episodes.
I think
I
that is
don't know why.
also, well, I do think it's also because it's close to what we are in this world, and like I said before, it's very close to our future in a way, and that's what I do love about Stargate. It could be a start for our space travels in that way.
You mentioned SG1 going in so heavy into Greek and Egyptian mythology. How did you feel when they start opening up into, say, Norse mythology and things of that nature?
Well, I do love the Norse mythology because, for example, I do read runes. I work with runes, so I am. I always have loved those mythology and stories and history. So, but it's like the Egyptian as well. It's something from our history, and you can do so much with it. And so when they put that into SG1, it even have more knowledge and more meanings. I think for me and also other people, because it's also a little bit of history we known as Earthlings. So yeah,
Oh, I'm with you. I'm with you. So the runes, I would assume, are Celtic. Ah, okay. All right. All right. So yeah, I would think, well, when they opened up, when they expanded the mythos for me, I thought that I thought that it was an interesting way to go because they had dealt with so many. They had dealt with that particular same type of formula with the Egyptian system lords, for instance. You know that they had started bringing characters back from the dead several times. You know, like for instance, Apophis. You know,
yeah.
so to expand it, I thought was a natural progression, and I think it was a positive overall for the show.
So there is only one man who is the big boss of this whole military Earth thingy, and that is General George Hammond. What do you want to
Yes.
say about him?
You know, okay. So for most of the series, I seen, and I'm not gonna say I say up to a point, and I'll tell you what that point was. But up to a point in the series, I always seen General Hammond as he was a father figure to the team and to the complex, but he was really stern, and he always had a way of understanding what motivated his people. And the earliest example of that to me was the first episode again of SG1, where Hammond knew that Colonel O'Neill was lying about what he did on Chulak and everything like that. But he knew that he couldn't just, you know, order him to carry out the mission that he wanted. He basically manipulated the situation to get Colonel O'Neill not only to rejoin SG1, but to go and correct the things that was going on the planet. Now, the point that came to me to where I really could look back at General Hammond and truly understand why that was because the episode 1967, where we got a chance for the team to go back in time and meet Lieutenant Hammond and to come to find out that he was basically pulling a Guinan and Captain Picard through the whole series up to that point because he had already knew them. Just that was always a great thing, and I like how his storyline progressed as far as what they did with him, as far as promoting him and having him work with the president and taking charge of the one of the Earth ships and his role in the battle with the system lords. So you know, so I liked it. I always thought highly of General Hammond.
There was a point that the changing of the cast actors left. How do you think, or what was your feeling about when that happened?
And that's why I'm gonna agree with you because to me, well, I can safely say that I've seen the original SG1 team. That was the family. Those are our road dogs. That was the team right there. That was the unbreakable. You know, four distinct personalities that made the immovable juggernaut. That was SG1. You know, able to bring down system lords, able to save civilizations and worlds and Earth countless times. Right. So when they started doing things like, you know, bringing in other characters. Although I liked Quinn, you know, I liked his perspective that he brought to the team. To me, he was no replacement for Daniel Jackson. You know, when they, and one of the greatest sci-fi duos to me ever is Claudia Black and I forget his name. Oh my goodness, but they were on Farscape together, right? Bryn Bowder. So when they brung those two over to join the team of SG1, Colonel Mitchell and Vala, it was kind of a double-edged sword with me because I missed Colonel O'Neill. Although Colonel O'Neill had humor in him, when the situation needed it, Colonel O'Neill could be pretty dark,
Yeah.
and that was the balance that Daniel Jackson needed for the team, you
Yeah.
know. So, but Colonel, his character seemed ill prepared for the experience of the experience needed to lead that team as he was written as a character. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, um, and Vala, although she was always awesome, Vala to me is just I get a kick out of anything that Claudia Black plays. I get a kick out of, but she should not have been a member of the team. She should have probably been a consultant, somebody that they probably ran across that was on maybe another team. But I think the core actors and the core characters of the team were special.
Yeah, I think that's why I have that feeling too of if I watch one of the younger series, then it doesn't feel like SG1.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's I don't know in that way why, but yeah, I also that's also I have with, for example, with Star Trek. There are some, if you are looking to the new Star Trek series, for example, Discovery, I had to watch it for a couple of times till I could say, okay, now I can see it's Star Trek.
I still haven't had that ability to do that yet.
Yeah, it's like I said, SG1 is always special to me, and uh, other additions to it or other teams or crews in what kind of part of the galaxy they are. I don't know. I really have to um, dive into it, and maybe I have to put my prejudice outside because maybe that's the thing also because you expect the same as SG1 and they put the whole team differently or the storyline is super differently, then it is a bummer for you if you watch it.
Well, I wouldn't say it's a prejudice more so than a preference because it's not like you can't acknowledge the contributions that these other teams have brought to the Stargate universe. It's just that you prefer to see what goes on, and you're more invested in the storyline and the histories and futures, for instance, of the members of the SG1 team. So I think that's a preference, and that's only because they started it off. They was the originals. Everything else can be considered a spinoff or
Yeah, you
messing with the
can.
original formula.
Yeah. We also talked a little bit of Apophis, of course. What do you think about his character?
Of who?
Apophis.
Apophis. Okay. Oh, okay. So the Apophis has always been what's the word that could most accurately explain Apophis that I could use on your podcast? He has always been a very dynamic character. Okay, he 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 has always been super well, not always, because when they started resurrecting him, but when you knew Apophis was involved, you knew it was stuff was serious when Apophis was around. Out of all the system lords that they introduced, you know, Apophis always seemed the deadliest of them all. Even out of the one that used to claim hell, I forget what his name was, so-called something like that. Even to him, Apophis at his height, at his prime as being a system lord, was always a very menacing and I dare say cunning system lord, you know. How they ended up reducing him from that, I didn't really like, you know, because of the stature he had held, you know, for me in the canon.
So there was also a moment when the Gula Old of, I thought it was his wife. I can't remember. But he has a harem of all women, and I thought there was one of the members of SG1, female member, who was kidnapped, and she was one of the women that could be in. Oh, yeah, that would be a replacement of the Gula Old of the Queen, if I can say it like that.
Her name, what was her name? Oh my God, what was her name? Uh,
But
I
my point
forget her
was,
name.
my point
Hmm?
is, so they also started human hosts for the Gula Olds.
Yes, yes. See, were you surprised that humans can be hosts for ghouls?
Well, it was a little bit of confusing because first they all say it's the host has to be like Theox folk. They are born specially for it, and it's also made to let the girl all survive.
Hmm.
Wow, you know what I'm thinking now? It's almost like the symbionts from Star Trek.
Hmm. The Trill?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Let's. There's so much that we could dive into as far as the similarities between storylines in SG1 and storylines of Trek. But
Mm-hmm.
I can say that if you remember correctly, if I, well, not correctly, but if you remember in the series, they established that the Jaffa were genetically engineered humans.
Mm-hmm.
So, so basically, although humans are able to do the same things as far as gestating a Jaffa, I mean not a Jaffa, but a Gawul that a Jaffa can, it's just that a Jaffa is like Captain America with it. They come with the pouch, you know. They come with the need for the symbiotes, them being inside them, so that they can have their longevity and strength and all of that kind of stuff. So uh, they prefer Jafar, but yeah, they can do the same thing inside of a human.
Do you remember that episode that they went to a culture and the men were all the bosses and the great and the female had to obey them, and I remember that Carter was there and she needed to prove herself in a man-to-man combat and
Ah, yeah.
to prove them that female also can be strong. uh, I do think that is some kind of a lesson also for people who are watching it in a way. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, let me say that when I first seen that episode, I was already hands down for the episode because the bad guy in that episode is the same actor who played Shane Tsung in the movie Mortal Kombat when I was a kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was always a fan of his. So to have him in that episode already, I'm invested in the episode. Now,
Yeah.
and now this episode is a perfect example of what I mean when I say when I gave you the answer I did when you asked why were guys enthralled with Carter, you know, because it's episodes like that showing her strength, not only when she has gadgets and things like that, and you know her material support. You know, even without any of that, she's still able to face situations and overcome situations with grace, you know, and with strength. And that's not only that's not only attractive for the males, but that's empowering for the females who had seen that too. who in say other sci-fi shows wouldn't have depicted her doing that. They would have depicted Carter using, say, her sexuality to get out of that situation or to trick the guy out of that situation. But that's not the route that they took with her in that episode. And I agree with you, it was a great episode for her.
Well, what I also think that Carter was bringing a soft side to the male team,
Hmm.
and she was kind of, yeah, she was a tomboy in a way, but she
Hmm.
also could tone the guys down in the way of, okay, guys, there's also a female here, so behave.
She was there. Okay, if I remember the psychology correctly, it was like the ego, super ego, and the id, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I believe it was the ego that basically kept the other two extremes at balance, right? I believe that Carter, when you say that she was the soft side of the team, I think that for me, she was more that ego. She was the balance of the team because of her position as a soldier, she would have to follow ONeill's orders. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of times, like I said, ONeill could be dark, you know, and she may not openly disagree with ONeill because of her position as a soldier, but the presence of Daniel's opposition, she has somebody to that he can't just be like, be quiet and follow orders. She has somebody who she can team up with. And even on the flip side of that, there's been times where she's did the opposite with Daniel, to team up with ONeill to say change Daniel's mind. So I've always seen her as the balance between those two extremes of Daniel Jackson and ONeill.
Yeah, I think this is a better explanation than what I gave, but um,
Not at all, not at all.
this is a little bit off the record. You just mentioned Mortal Kombat.
Hmm.
I am planning to do an episode of Mortal Kombat. Can I ask you to be my guest in there?
I wouldn't mind at all.
Good.
I love Mortal
That
Kombat.
is
That's the greatest game
fantastic.
ever.
Okay, well, I think we have covered a little bit what we wanted to say in this episode. Is there something you like to add?
So, I'm curious. You never told me who was your favorite SG1 character?
Teok.
And why?
Why? Well, Teok was for me, and now I'm going to reference this a little bit to data from TNG.
Mm.
Uh, Teok in the beginning was some kind of a robot ish character. But at the end,
Hmm.
because he became looser and he became, I don't want to say more human, but more, you could see, because he was growing as a character, but also as humanizing person, he became more likable in the way of like that he's got some kind of innocence. For example, and I wanted to say that just before. Do you remember that they were in a hotel, Jackson and Teok, and Teok asked uh, Jackson for a coin so he could lie on the vibrating bed.
Yeah.
So
More. Yeah, I got
those moments were just so funny, and I loved it. And there are through the whole series, Teok and especially Teok and Connor doesn't have a very great relation and connection and in a way, Connor Jackson is like a mentor for Teok, but Teok brings not only um, what can I say uh, the well father figure or uh, the boss of the team, but it's also that he, um, I remember, and I thought it was in the movie that he lost his son, and I think in mentoring Teal'c, he gained a little bit of sanity back because it's, well, not totally the same, but it's, yeah, he has something to live for.
How did you? That was the one thing that I did not like that they did with the Tilk story arc, and that was how they did his relationship with his son Ryak. I
Mm.
did. I really wish that they would have done something a lot better with, just how they related to each other throughout the whole series, and then to have that happen at the end. I just wish that it was a lot of. I wish they would have done better with that.
Yeah,
That
I agree with that, yeah.
that was yeah. I really enjoyed this. Joining you on the podcast. That was awesome.
Yeah, well, thank you very much to be my guest, and I enjoyed it too. It's very nice talking with somebody who really loved the sci-fi side, and also the series. When I was younger, also watched to talk about it because, in one way, it's a little bit of nostalgic.
Mm.
But yeah, it was nice talking to you, dear listeners. I'd like to thank you for listening to this podcast. I hope you like it, and I try to be diverse as much as I can. Tell me what you think how I'm doing with this podcast. If you have any tips for me how I can do things better, let me know. If you'd like to talk about this episode or want to comment on this episode, you can reach out on Podbean, the Facebook group, the YouTube channel, and the Discord server of Orinda Talks Fantasy and Sci-Fi. I also have a Twitter account especially for this podcast at OTFASP. Orinda Talks Fantasy and Sci-Fi is also to listen, follow, and subscribe on Podbean, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Facebook group, and the YouTube channel. In the next episode, we will talk about Battlestar Galactica, the series from 2004. I am your host, Orinda. Thank you for listening, and I will see you next time.